A lot of states and a lot of farmers are going to wait and see what those rules look like, which could take a matter of months. It's not to say that there's not money to be made in 2019, but it's definitely a gamble at this moment to, even if this farm bill passes, gets to the president, no problem. It is a gamble to see where this market is going to head.
That's Kristen Nichols. She's the editor of Hemp Industry Daily, a website devoted to, you guessed it, industrial hemp. This is the Lancaster Farming Podcast. I'm Eric Herlock, and today we'll talk 2018 Farm Bill, which, as of this very moment, is being voted on in the House of Representatives. We'll get into what this Farm Bill is going to mean for farmers, what it's going to mean for the ag industry. Some big changes headed our way if this thing passes and then gets signed into law. So stick around and we'll talk to Kristen. Hi, Kristen. Welcome to the Lancaster Farming Podcast. Could you introduce yourself for us?
I'm Kristen Nichols. I'm the editor of Hemp Industry Daily in Denver, Colorado.
So it's December 11th, it's Tuesday afternoon, and there's a lot of Farm Bill buzz, especially in the industrial hemp space. Can you bring us up to speed? Tell us what's going on?
Okay. Every so often, Congress has to reauthorize all kinds of farming programs. They, by shorthand, call it the Farm Bill. It's up this year. Members of Congress have been negotiating for months back and forth what that is going to look like. A farm bill, as your listeners know, if you're in agriculture, a farm bill is huge and there's something in it for everyone. I mean, something in it for everyone to hate. It is enormous and can take a long time for Congress to work out the wrinkles. So here we are. We're in December. Congress ends at, there's a new Congress coming next year. So anything that Congress wants done must get to the president's desk here in the next couple weeks. One of those things is the Farm Bill. That includes a lot of measures, everything from subsidy payments to commodity farmers, to authorizing some water protection programs. One little thing in the Farm Bill is a hemp expansion. As you may know, Congress authorized states in 2014 to experiment with hemp. If they wanted to, they could do a pilot project on hemp as long as the states could guarantee that they would make sure that the hemp does not have so much THC that it's actually considered marijuana. So the proposal before Congress right now is whether to lift that pilot project language and say anybody, anywhere can grow hemp for any reason.
And so how does it look? Is this going to happen?
It looks tough. Hemp may be an innocent bystander. Here, you've got a lot of big pieces in this Farm Bill. The biggest one is, of course, food stamp payments. That is the biggest chunk of the money in every Farm Bill. And there is a feeling among Republicans in Congress that this is their last chance. When they control both chambers this year, this is their last chance to maybe make some big changes to that program and that kind of government spending. It's not to do with hemp, but it's still unclear whether everybody is going to agree to basically extend the current food stamp provisions, keep everything as is, and add some stuff like hemp legalization. It's just changes by the hour, and it's hard to say.
So when is the actual vote?
Okay, votes have not been scheduled. If you're into the every little bit, every step of the process, right now the conferees have agreed. That means the negotiators from House and Senate Agriculture have all signed on to a Farm Bill compromise that basically is mostly a status quo bill. And one of the main only changes is this hemp expansion. So the conferees have signed off, but right now both the full House and the full Senate have to agree to that language in the compromise before it can get to the president's desk. That's very unlikely that probably takes at least a week, even in a hurry-up offense kind of, which is where Congress is right now.
And so it has to get to the president's desk by the 21st of December?
Well, this is a tough one. According to the official calendar, Congress is done for the year on December 21st, which would mean that anything has to get to the president's desk by then.
Right.
But just this morning, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was talking about priorities he wants to see done by the end of the year, and he threatened to call senators to work between Christmas and New Year.
Uh-oh.
That is within his prerogative. They could come back after Christmas. Usually when lawmakers do that, it is a threat to members to either threaten, I'm going to make you work weekends or I'm going to make you work over a holiday to get folks to get their, back ends in gear. So I think it's unlikely that would happen. However, they have until January 3rd when a new Congress is seated. They could get the president a bill at 11:59 on January 2nd, and it would be a legal bill.
Oh, okay. Okay, so let's say this farm bill passes, it gets signed, it becomes law. What changes do you expect to see either in agriculture or in the cannabis space or just in culture in general?
Well, it is hard to overestimate how dramatic of a change this would be if this farm bill becomes law. What I mean by that is because a low THC variety of cannabis, that's what we call hemp, that would come out of the Controlled Substances Act. And if that happens, then you could see farmers all across this country who are facing record low commodity prices, who are maybe sitting on soybeans they can't sell to China right now because of trade barriers, who just in general facing, there's lots of tough times in dairy, tough times really for meat producers, grain producers, all kinds of producers across the board that you hear about all the time. Hemp right now looks like a profitable hedge against those low commodity prices. So you could see a lot of entrants from farmers who have not been interested in participating until it's clear that they are not growing something that could be considered a controlled substance, just want some extra legal assurances. Right. They're not endangering, say, crop insurance or other farm subsidies. If they are sure that they're not endangering anything else, they probably have no problem with hemp and might be very successful at producing it. So it's an open question, but one that a lot of people are making some pretty big bets on about putting hemp in the ground for next year.
Yeah, right. How do you think the ag industry will respond? Will you think it'll be a glacial pace or a quick pace? That's
a fascinating question, and one that we're going to probably look north to find the answer. Canada grows a lot more hemp than we do. They have allowed hemp production since the 90s. And you see in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, some very big grain and oilseed producers producing a lot of hemp up there. Right now, Canada is recently allowed those hemp producers to extract the hemp for CBD.
Right.
CBD is by far the most profitable use of hemp right now. The open question for how soon American agriculture jumps in is that because this crop has been illegal to grow, broadly speaking, for the last 50 years, we don't have a lot of certified seeds. We don't have a lot of agronomic market data. We don't have a lot of the basic research of how much does it cost to grow an acre of hemp? Right. How much water do I need? What kind of pesticides can I use? So I think you'll see, even though you'll see a flood of entrants, this is still, as one expert said at the University of Kentucky, this is a grain of sand on the beach of agriculture. It's an open question how soon American producers hop into the hemp space. Profits look like they're going to be higher. Per acre profits could be higher. However, because this crop has been illegal to grow for almost 50 years, we don't have things that farmers really rely on when they put plants in the ground. I'm talking about certified seeds, which are very limited to non-existent in hemp, right. And kind of some good market data in terms of how much your per acre costs are going to be, how much water does this crop take, what pests and weed pressure does this crop see. So I think you'll see a lot of mainline agriculture getting into the hemp space, but maybe taking a year or two to figure out the best way how.
Right. You talk to certain farmers and they say, well, is there in a market? Am I going to be able to sell any of this? And then you talk to people who are actually growing it. This is our second year in Pennsylvania, and there's no harvesting equipment. So I'm curious to know, how soon, the big equipment manufacturers will start marketing products here.
Right now, the hemp industry is an enormous chicken and egg operation. What I mean by that is a lot of farmers say, I'd grow it, but there's nowhere to sell it. There's nobody that can process it. And then you have processors saying, well, why would I build a factory? There's no hemp to process. Right. You mentioned agricultural equipment. The thing that makes hemp great is that it's a very strong fiber crop, which is why it was used so commonly to make sailcloth and rope for centuries. But that same strength in the fiber makes it, they say, it's hell-on equipment. It could chew up a six-figure combine. And when farmers try to use a lot of the equipment they use on other commodity crops, they find that it just does not work well on hemp. So I think you're going to see also kind of a slow tiptoe because of those equipment problems when it comes to getting hemp in the barn and making money on it.
So what do you think farmers should be doing now to prepare themselves for what seems like an inevitable change?
They always say that American farmers are so great they can grow the money out of anything. So I'd say step number one would be don't believe every number you hear. Some folks are telling farmers you can make $100,000 an acre on hemp. You can make $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 an acre, no problem on hemp. That certainly is possible, but it's far from easy. So any farm consultant who would say any farmer interested in growing hemp, maybe try an acre, maybe try a half acre. Certainly don't, put a lot of your land into it until you know that you can find a variety that works for you and what your production costs are going to be, because there have been definitely farmers burned who have set aside 100 acres, then, as you said, found no way to harvest it, or found they had intense weed and pest pressure, or just didn't get production because they couldn't find great seeds. Right. That's still very much a problem in this industry.
Yeah. Well, that leads into my next question. So as this industry grows, how can farmers avoid getting the short end of the stick?
One big thing is to wait for the United States Department of Agriculture to turn all its attention to hemp. The one thing that's great about the USDA and the NASS, the National Agricultural Statistics Service, is you can get kind of commodity information. You can find out what this crop is trading for. How much can I sell it for? Where would I find a buyer? A lot of states and a lot of farmers are going to wait and see what those rules look like, which could take a matter of months. It's not to say that there's not money to be made in 2019, but it's definitely a gamble at this moment to, even if this farm bill passes, gets to the president, no problem. It is a gamble to see where this market is going to head.
Right. I'm reading one of your articles online about the changes in the farm bill, and you say that the USDA will have to come up with the rules regarding hemp, and they have to do it expeditiously as possible. What does that mean to you?
Well, interestingly, they don't say as fast as possible. They say as fast as practicable, which is a slightly different standard. I think that what's going to be interesting to watch, if this passes, it's going to be interesting to watch how the USDA regulates this crop, because it really speaks to why it has been illegal to grow hemp for 50 years. And that is, it is difficult to regulate the difference between marijuana and hemp. The two can look and smell identical. And if you're standing in front of a plant that is a kind of a flower variety of cannabis that is for CBD or THC production, the only way to tell whether that is marijuana or whether that is hemp is to take a sample and run it through a spectrometer. There is not a fast and easy way for a county extension agent or a local sheriff's officer to tell whether you're growing hemp or marijuana. That's an enormous lift for the United States Department of Agriculture. The language in there says that states can submit their plans to USDA for approval. It does not say what that exactly needs to look like, and that's a real open question. Let's say not all states currently have hemp programs. Pretty big farm states, Iowa, Texas, South Dakota, Georgia, have no hemp programs now. Under this bill, USDA would have to do it to guarantee that those plants that are growing are hemp and not marijuana. And I think it's a huge open question what that would look like.
I see in your article about New York State banning CBD foods and vape products. That's kind of a major blow to the CBD industry, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Two things. It's difficult to separate the hemp industry and the CBD industry. Right now, according to our surveys, somewhere north of 80% of current hemp producers are growing for CBD. That is one molecule that the cannabis plant makes. The females of the cannabis plant make in good numbers. And some people in the cannabis industry say, you know what? The three letters that keep me up at night is not the DEA, it's the FDA. And that is the next frontier here. If this bill takes hemp out of the Controlled Substances Act, all of a sudden, no one is a drug criminal for growing it, but certainly there are other federal agencies that regulate the kinds of things you put in your mouth. and that's the FDA. It's very unclear where this heads. Will the FDA look the other way while people are putting CBD products into foods, into drinks, into coffee left and right? Or will they say this should be treated like a dietary supplement? You can't go to a farmer's market right now. You can't go to a farmer's market anywhere and buy ibuprofen or vitamin C that someone made in their basement, right?
Right.
There are regulations around those kinds of frameworks for how things are sold. And I think you're going to see not just the USDA, but the FDA have a pretty heavy hand in what the market ends up looking like. So you're seeing states like New York, California, Ohio, taking a look at CBD in foods and saying, how should this be regulated? How should it be tested? What is okay to put in the food without checking with anyone? As everyone knows, any gallon of milk you buy from a traditional grocery store has a note on there that vitamin A and vitamin D have been added.
Sure.
Even though it's legal to add those to milk, you have to tell consumers. It's not clear right now what that's going to look like for CBD and how long that might take to work out, but it certainly could be years.
Okay, I was talking to the president of a CBD company on this podcast a few weeks ago, and he mentioned what he called the endocannabinoidal deficiency that humans are experiencing. What do you make of that?
Let's hop right from the FDA to another big thing that's going to change if hemp becomes legal, and that is increased medical and science research. Right now, in the CBD and hemp industry, you will hear wild and wildly different claims about what this thing does. Does it cure cancer? Does it stop epilepsy? Does it reduce depression and anxiety? You hear all kinds of medical claims that are difficult for consumers to tell what's real or what's a marketing pitch. Everybody has cannabinoid receptors. That is why this substance affects people. Even fish have cannabinoid receptors. Every vertebrate has cannabinoid receptors. But the science of how those interact with the cannabinoids that are in this plant, whether it has to be heated, for example, heated to a certain degree, whether all these hundreds of cannabinoids need to work together, or whether you can isolate one on its own and get the health benefits. Can you get the health benefits of, say, a CBD product and not have zero THC and be able to pass a drug test? That's really an open question, and one that we could hopefully see a lot more research coming out from the National Institutes of Health and the other health rating agent or health regulatory agencies to make sure what is real and what is snake oil. Right now, it's really hard for consumers to tell how to verify a company's claims.
It seems like cannabis is poised to be very disruptive in the healthcare space.
We're going to see a lot of potential pharmaceutical interest in this plant, whether it's a THC product or a CBD product or anywhere in between. There's lots of different cannabinoids. There's lots of research underway and people in the pipeline for FDA approval. Last summer, in the summer of 2018, the FDA and the DEA approved the first ever medicine derived from the cannabis plant. This is something called Epidiolex for seizures. The question is, how many more drugs are in the pipeline and for what ailments? That's an open question because you can't really find out. It's not public information. But
Sure.
There certainly are dozens of other companies pursuing pharmaceutical applications for THC or cannabis products. The question is, what does that mean for other producers? Back to what I was mentioning about, buy ibuprofen at the farmer's market.
Right.
There are different levels. I did not know until recently. You can get prescription grade fish oil products. You can get fish oil products at your local drugstore. There are different levels of how things, different strengths and different formulations for medicines. So it'll be fascinating to watch what are the market opportunities for farmers in terms of producing some pharmaceutical grade cannabis, and what are the costs and opportunities, how that different from creating like a nutraceutical or a food grade cannabis.
Right.
I think all those lanes are all to be worked out. Could take years, but that's going to be a real big open question for the industry.
Right. Why do you think Mitch McConnell is so interested in hemp?
The reason we have hemp at Hemp Industry now, and the reason they're expanding it, it's 3 words: tobacco state Republicans. So you see big support from tobacco state Republicans looking for a hedge or a replacement to the tobacco industry where it's been decimated. So some of the biggest supporters, you see Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, Rand Paul, another senator from Kentucky. If you look at a map of where most hemp is being grown now, it grows well where tobacco grows well. That production is kind of the same and has a lot of similarities, I guess I would say. So that's why you see so much support from Senator McConnell. As an interesting but wonky side bit, Kentucky is the only state that did not spend tobacco settlement money back in the day on health care. Instead, Kentucky saved its money to invest in finding a replacement for tobacco. So today, fast forward 20 years, you see Kentucky investing heavily in developing a hemp industry, giving companies tax breaks to develop processing facilities, really opening up how hemp can be used and encouraging farmers to try new things with hemp more than any other state. So you also see a lot of tobacco companies kind of on the sidelines right now, waiting to see where this market heads. I don't think you're going to see big tobacco, as they say, really heavily invested in the hemp industry until it's clear that this is a legal product.
Right. Here in Pennsylvania, we have a small yet thriving tobacco industry with the plain sect farmers, the Amish and the Mennonite. And there's been a whole lot of interest from, those communities in hemp. And some of them have, like grandfathers that remember it. They were growing it to feed their chickens back in the day. It's
grown very similarly. It's hung and it's dried. So if you are a successful tobacco farmer or you have the kinds of equipment that are needed to grow and process tobacco, you can make a pretty easy pivot to hemp.
Let's get back to the Farm Bill. What do you think farmers are looking for?
I think one thing that farmers are really looking for in this Farm Bill is the biggest gap right now in the hemp industry, which is booming and growing. However, almost every day you hear complaints from farmers in the hemp space that they don't have a lot of information. They don't know what they should be selling it for. They don't know what they should be buying seed for in terms of pricing. That would change pretty quickly if we have federal involvement. So it sounds kind of counterintuitive to say that this industry is really thirsty for federal regulation, but they sure are, because they want to know. They want access to certified seed. They want some government assistance in locating the best varieties, and certainly accessing water rights and knowing what's a good price for this product. That's one big thing to watch if this becomes legal.
Okay. Can you tell me about your publication, Hemp Industry Daily?
Sure. Hemp Industry Daily is an online publication. We cover the hemp and CBD sectors. We write for investors and farmers and processors and retailers, the whole supply chain in hemp. It's a free online, hempindustrydaily.com. We also try to cobble together some market reports. As I was mentioning before, it's hard to know what's a good price for, say, a pound of hemp flower or a ton of hemp fiber. So try to compile that kind of, it's very much a traditional trade publication just about hemp instead of potatoes or corn or some other crop.
Okay. So where do you get your funding from? Is that driven through advertising?
No, we're a spinoff of Marijuana Business Daily, which, again, we make money from market reports and conferences. Okay. They basically make all their money from conferences, bringing together industry players to connect, because there's not a lot of, the kinds of agencies that help farmers do business in traditional commodities don't exist in cannabis. So the industry is kind of building it themselves with trade shows, market reports, and networking events right now.
Okay, so farmers can go to hempindustrynews.com to get news about the industry. What else would you recommend people check out to educate themselves?
Hemp is new, but I think state departments of agriculture are learning more about it. Whenever anyone comes to me with a question of where do I find a processor, who's going to buy my crop, how much should I be paying for seed, where do I get seed, I say start with your state department of agriculture. This will not be the first time someone has asked for information. Call the plant division. They have some resources available to you. A lot of universities of land grant ag schools are doing a lot of interesting work in terms of really sussing out what's going to work well in your area. So like anything else, if you're going to start a new crop, it pays to do some research, just reading industry publications or networking online or reaching out to the state regulators or the county even regulators that help you grow other crops are probably a great place to start.
Kristen Nichols, thank you so much for talking to us today. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks for having me. Call anytime. I always jokingly say, whatever you think about cannabis, it truly is the miracle drug of news.
Okay. Thanks, Kristen. And thank you all for listening to today's show. These are exciting times for industrial hemp. Maybe by next week we'll have more great news about the Farm Bill. Until then, if you have questions or comments about anything you heard, or you have ideas you want to talk about, send me an email to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. I am your host, Eric Herlock, digital editor at Lancaster Farming, and until next week, I'll see you in the newspaper.